Even the most reserved royals frequently show their most human side when they are grieving. Many people have been profoundly touched by Lady Helen Taylor's homage to her mother, the Duchess of Kent, which is filled with both love and sadness. It went beyond a simple farewell. It was an honest, heartfelt statement from a daughter. Her remark's passion has provoked discussion and caused individuals to consider how close they are. Why did so many people outside of the royal circle find this tribute moving? Come learn about Lady Helen Taylor's tragic farewell to the Duchess of Kent, her adored mother. A dignified royal life. One of Britain's most revered and discreet royals passed away on September 4, 2025. The Duchess of Kent, Catherine, passed away at the age of 92. She had died at Kensington Palace, according to a somber statement released by Buckingham Palace, the exact location where she had spent a large portion of her later years. The moment was not unexpected. The Duchess had been in poor health for a while, and as the years passed, she made less public appearances. Nevertheless, Britain was moved when the formal confirmation came in. The Duchess, who stepped aside from the limelight decades earlier to devote her time to teaching music and promoting causes near and dear to her heart, was what most people remembered Catherine as. But this was much more profound for her family. The loss was the most personal of heartbreaks for her only daughter, Lady Helen Taylor, in addition to being a national event. Lady Helen had always referred to her mother as her dependable mentor, the one who taught her how to strike a balance between her personal and professional lives. Losing her would mean losing the person who had influenced her life since she was a young child. Imagine having a mother who grounded you, who valued compassion over titles, and who favored simplicity over grandeur when you were growing up in royal circles. Lady Helen bid farewell to that woman. People started to wonder why Catherine's death was so different from prior royal deaths at this point. Her narrative has the solution. She had made the decision to live a more private life, away from the spotlight, but her influence on people around her lasted a lifetime, unlike many royals. When her death was revealed, tributes came in from those who remembered her friendliness, modesty, and willingness to take on everyday roles that other royals frequently avoided. She was not the type of duchess who made headlines every day. Her absence has been rendered the more poignant by the juxtaposition between her regal status and her modest living. This was reflected in the atmosphere at Kensington Palace that September day. In order to preserve the decorum that Catherine had always cherished, family members met in private. With her family by her side, she had gracefully endured her last few months. Her final days were peaceful, according to those close to the palace, and she knew she was cherished and never left alone. That had something appropriate about it. The presence of her family at the end was a last gift given back to a woman who gave so much of herself to others. And the weight of that moment must have been too much for Lady Helen. Only she could really get what it's like to watch the person you've always relied on disappear, knowing that everyone is watching but still experiencing it in the most private way possible. Many people have been considering the question raised by her passing: how will a woman who made such a different decision in her royal life be remembered by Lady Helen and the rest of the family? It would be impossible to recount Catherine's narrative without acknowledging the life she co-founded with Prince Edward, Duke of Kent. They were married for more than 60 years, starting in 1961. Their union, which connected a young Catherine Worsley, the daughter of a Yorkshire landowner, to one of the most senior members of the royal family, was regarded at the time as one of the most remarkable of its time. She was unique, though, not because of the position's grandeur, but rather because of how she decided to live it. Catherine never let her royal titles overshadow her personal calling, in contrast to many of her peers. She performed her obligations as Duchess of Kent with honor, representing the crown, attending state functions, and showing up at national gatherings. However, people who knew her frequently said that the thing that impressed them the most was her kindness. She was never aloof behind formalities. She addressed people personally, frequently smiling, leaning in, and posing queries that gave common people the impression that they were important. Her kindness wasn't a show for the cameras. She discovered her true passion for music and education, away from the opulent halls and glitzy dinners. She developed into a passionate advocate for musical charities, supporting groups that encouraged aspiring musicians. Her decision to teach music at a Hull primary school surprised many at the time. A duchess leading youngsters through lessons while standing in front of a classroom was not the typical royal route, but it revealed her personality. Contribution was more important to her than prestige. Her path was also marked by her faith. The world took notice when Catherine converted to Catholicism in 1994. In doing so, she became the first senior royal family member to do so in centuries. But for her, it was an individual decision that came from conviction rather than reasoning. She could have isolated herself from the royal establishment with this choice, but instead it enhanced her reputation as someone who lived by her convictions, regardless of what others thought. No one was more influenced by these traits than Lady Helen Taylor's offspring. Lady Helen grew up seeing her mother strike a balance between tradition and humanism. She realized that being royal may entail walking side by side with people rather than standing above them. Due in large part to her mother's influence, Lady Helen never pursued fame the way other people did. She learned from the Duchess that a more subdued role might be equally important, and that respect from people you knew was a better indicator of dignity than news coverage. Her mother's commitment to culture and education is reflected in Helen's appreciation of the arts and her participation in artistic and philanthropic endeavors. It becomes evident at this time why Helen's homage to her mother was so moving. She was bidding farewell not just to a parent, but also to the model that had shaped her life. Furthermore, as we'll disclose, the Duchess of Kent has a deeper impact on her daughter than many people have ever recognized. Royal matriarch's legacy, because of the era Catherine lived in, her tale is also significant. She became the royal family's oldest surviving member following the death of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022. Although the job was symbolic, it lacked an official title. When she initially joined the family, she served as the link to a history that dated back to George VI, the reigning monarch. She had survived several periods of transition in the throne and had lived to witness the reign of Charles III by the time of her death. Very few royals possessed such a span, and even fewer carried it so steadily. The people closest to her felt the most the effects of her matriarchal status. She served as the focal point of family life for her kids and grandkids. Her husband, the Duke of Kent, was frequently in the spotlight due to his public duties, but Catherine was the one who kept the house cozy. She made gatherings at Kensington Palace feel more relaxed. She promoted intimacy, cherished family dinners, and provided stability that was not typically typical of royal homes. Many were impressed by the equilibrium she was able to preserve. She could dress formally for a state function one day and then sit in the yard with her grandchildren, putting them completely at ease. She was known for her ability to combine elegance and simplicity, which kept the family together in the face of decades of public scrutiny. This aspect of her mother was personal to Lady Helen. She viewed Catherine as the force that influenced her perspective on life, not merely as a duchess or well-known person. A lasting impression was made by her mother's resilience in the face of illness and personal struggles. Helen frequently looked up to her poise as an example. Above all, Helen found strength in her faith, which served as a reminder that even in a royal environment, conviction was more important than tradition. These are the things that made Catherine a generational leader in addition to being a royal matriarch. The woman who provided Helen with stability in her life is gone, and whose impact is still felt in the way she conducts herself in the royal family. This clarifies why the Duchess's farewell started at the point where her life had come to an end. Her coffin started its trip to Westminster Cathedral from the chapel at Kensington Palace. This was a symbolic transition from the private realm in which she had spent her final years to the stately venue where the country would bid her farewell. In order for those gathered along the way to see the casket, the hearse that carried her was constructed with a glass roof, evidently as it went by. Because of this particular element, the farewell was seen to the public rather than being held behind closed doors. For many, it was their sole opportunity to honor a woman who had faithfully served for decades. That day, there was reverence and silence in the streets. People gathered to remember, not to see a show. They came because the Duchess of Kent's dignity had changed people's lives. Some recalled her efforts in music and education. She greeted strangers like old friends throughout her travels to the area, which made others think of her friendliness. The car with the glass roof became more than just a means of transportation in that instant. It developed into a dynamic area of collective memory. The Royal Dragoon Guards were in the forefront of the procession. It was no coincidence that they were there. Over the years, she had remained loyal to and supported this unit. A gloomy rhythm was produced by their speed, the measured sound of their footsteps, and their crimson and dark clothing. Witnessing the connection between duty and loyalty was evident as they led her one last time. As the cortege arrived at Westminster Cathedral, serious ceremony replaced the dignity. The regiment members, who had led the march, now assumed a more personal role. With precise, cautious, and reverent moves, they carried her casket inside. This was a show of allegiance, a testament to the fact that her life's obligations were being fulfilled even in death. There was significance in witnessing the coffin being brought beneath Westminster Cathedral's arches. It was the intersection of public remembrance and private grieving. A farewell that combined the royal with the intensely personal took place in the cathedral, which has profound echoes and a lengthy history. Lady Helen would have felt an almost intolerable mixture of pride and grief at witnessing her mother's casket arriving in this manner. She was reminded that although her mother's life was dedicated to her family, it was also inextricably linked to the nation's and the crown's larger history. Lady Helen Taylor was spotted holding her father, the Duke of Kent, arm in arm as the Duchess of Kent's coffin lay in state. That small act conveyed more meaning to many onlookers than words ever could. The Duke, weak and distraught, supported himself by leaning on his daughter, who steadily kept up with him. Lady Helen was no longer merely a member of the royal family in that instant. As a daughter, she supported her father through the death of the woman who had influenced both of their lives. That moment's symbolism was potent. Lady Helen avoided attracting attention or giving speeches. Her homage was her presence. Her devotion, love, and respect for her late mother were evident in every step she took with her father. She had received the strength of silence from her mother, to let deeds do more talking than words. That explains why so many people found her poise so endearing. It was not an abstract loss for the Kent family. It was intimate. Helen's role was reversed as the public watched. She ended up being the one to support her family at a period of public grief. More than just a consoling gesture, her arm was intertwined with her father. It was a statement of solidarity. As the Duchess would have desired, the family would grieve together. Witnesses described the anguish in Helen's face. She maintained her composure, but her face was marked by the weight of the loss. She lost both a parent and a moral compass when her mother passed away. Nevertheless, the world saw a reflection of the Duchess herself in her serene power. Love in action, compassion in quiet, and dignity in grief. Many people will never forget the picture of the father and daughter together. It depicted the secret suffering hidden from the public eye, and the human cost of living as a king. It was Lady Helen Taylor's outward homage, as sincere as words could have been. Watch closely, because the events that transpired within Westminster Cathedral provided additional insight into the Duchess's remarkable life and religious beliefs. If you had been required at the GCC level, that would have been fantastic. I believe that would be fantastic. The other day someone asked me, family and faith. The Duchess of Kent became the first prominent member of the royal family to publicly convert to Roman Catholicism in almost 3 centuries, when she did so in 1994. Her ultimate farewell was defined by that choice, which made her Requiem Mass a significant event in the lengthy relationship between the Catholic Church and the monarchy, as well as a time of sadness. Westminster Cathedral, the mother church of Roman Catholicism in England and Wales, hosted the event. Its striking mosaics and red brick towers created a striking contrast to the typical Anglican settings used for royal burials. The Duchess did not believe that tradition should be broken for the sake of novelty. It was a logical progression of her own spiritual path. The prayers, readings, and music that filled the cathedral were all guided by this faith, which was now clearly visible. Her beliefs were mirrored in the Mass itself. Scripture readings led by clergy members that reflect her own dedication to Christian compassion and service. The Duchess's profound love of music was revealed via the somber beauty of the choral works and hymns that filled the room. People who knew her well remembered how music had played a major role in her philanthropic endeavors, helping up-and-coming musicians and creating opportunities for talent to thrive. It seemed appropriate that sound, which is so strongly associated with who she is, was so central to her farewell. Lady Helen Taylor did not view her mother's conversion to Catholicism as a remote theological issue. It influenced how she saw faith and family. Not only was she weeping, but she was also paying tribute to the belief that had characterized her mother's life for the past 30 years as she sat with mourners and watched her mother's casket being placed before the altar. The Duchess of Kent's position within the larger royal household was also reflected in the funeral. Generations of royals gathered for the service, each serving as a reminder of how long she had been a part of their common past. With family members present to offer their last respects, Lady Helen Taylor stood at the heart of it all, carrying herself with the same dignity her mother had always displayed. In an obvious display of his love and admiration for his cousin by marriage, King Charles was present. His existence was significant because it firmly anchored the Duchess's life into the narrative of the monarchy as a whole. He has frequently discussed the importance of family relationships, and those words manifested themselves on this day. In their capacity as the younger generation, who currently bear a large portion of the royal family's public responsibilities, the Prince and Princess of Wales also attended. Even as the royal household enters a new age under Charles's rule, their appearance spoke of continuity, demonstrating that the Duchess's many years of service had not been forgotten. Canada is advancing through nation-building initiatives. The siblings of the Duke of Kent, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, and younger royals who had only known Catherine as an aunt or grandmother were seated around them. From the early years when she married into the family to the later years when she became its matriarch, every individual there symbolized a different aspect of her life. The event itself demonstrated her continued profound connection. Notwithstanding her decision to spend a large portion of her life out of the public eye, people, however, were unable to overlook one absence. Acute sinusitis prevented Queen Camilla from attending the service when she was supposed to accompany her husband. Anyone can become ill at any time, thus her absence was understood and accepted. Nevertheless, the fact that the Queen had originally intended to attend showed how much the Duchess of Kent had meant. The Prince and Princess of Wales sent a personal note of sympathy in addition to their attendance. It wasn't a huge surprise because we've been discussing marriage for a while. Instead of using a formal signature, they used a warm personal touch by signing it with just W&C. The message acknowledged the magnitude of the loss and offered their sympathy. It served as a reminder to everyone that although royal formality frequently fosters distance, personal connections can be seen during times of tragedy. Outside the royal family, tributes were also offered. Many people thought Prime Minister Keir Starmer's remarks were appropriate. He commended the Duchess for her humanity, dignity, and compassion in her public position. These were not meaningless words. They represented how people actually perceived her, whether in formal contexts or as a result of her support of education and music. It must have been reassuring and bittersweet for Lady Helen Taylor to hear her mother remembered in this way. These attributes had influenced Helen's own perspective on life and went beyond her mother's public image. Political tributes, private letters, and royal attendance all combined to paint a complete picture of the Duchess of Kent's life. She was regarded as a national hero in addition to being a member of the royal family. That was evident at her funeral, but the voices of those closest to the Duchess brought back the strongest memories of her, not the ceremony. A warm legacy. Her grandchildren, Lady Marina and Lady Amelia Windsor expressed their deep sorrow at their grandmother's warmth as the Duchess of Kent's tributes went on. She made people feel heard and loved rather than like a remote royal figure. They recalled the small moments, such as family dinner discussions, or the tactful manner she gave counsel. In fact, the event helped me grow. When I started to understand how music, these recollections depicted a grandma who cherished intimacy and made time to be involved in her younger family members' lives. She served as a mentor to Lady Marina and Lady Amelia, but more significantly, she was a source of comfort and kindness. India Hicks, who recounted her own recollections of a considerate godmother, was one of the many godchildren in the Duchess's large entourage. The Duchess never missed a birthday, sending a card or a note to let him know she cared. Hicks said, "She showed her attention to detail during Christmas by giving thoughtful, little gifts that were equally personal. Although these were modest gestures, they were quite significant because they demonstrated her high regard for interpersonal relationships. The Duchess distinguished out for her sincere kindness in a royal family that is frequently perceived through ceremonial and convention. Another aspect of her narrative that set her apart was her support of charitable causes. She urged young people, particularly those without the opportunities that others took for granted, to follow their gifts. For her, music was more than just art. It was a source of joy, discipline, and self-assurance. As a living testament to her belief in providing chances to others, many of the projects she supported will continue to provide results for generations to come. Her daughter, Lady Helen, gave what was arguably the most heartfelt homage. She talked about how her mother managed to juggle the demanding demands of parenthood with the weight of royal duty. Lady Helen characterized her as a mother who was actively involved in her children's lives, rather than as a remote figure who was defined by her rank. She was their parent, supporting, guiding, and encouraging them at every turn. Her remarks served as a reminder to everyone there that the Duchess was a mother whose heart was always open to her family, in addition to being a Duchess. The public tributes gained substance from the personal accounts of family members and godchildren. They exposed a lady who considered service as both a responsibility and a privilege, who appreciated human connection and who never missed little things. Her burial at the Frogmore Royal Burial Ground on the Windsor estate marked the calm conclusion of her life. Her final voyage took place at this graveyard, where generations of royals have been buried. Frogmore's selection was highly meaningful. It reflected the Duchess's own taste for simplicity and was quiet, private, and removed from the opulence of public life. In a location that has long served as a haven for the royal family, her journey came full circle when her family came together to say their final farewell. At royal residences, flags were lowered to half-mast, a sign of her status in the country and monarchy. The Duchess had gained the respect of many, despite the fact that she might not have pursued attention. Everyone was reminded of her many years of service, her faith, and her unwavering dignity by the sight of lowered flags from Kensington Palace to Windsor Castle. In addition to being the Duchess of Kent, she will be remembered as a lady whose life was based on compassion, faith, and a steadfast commitment to helping others. Her dedication to charitable causes, especially those involving music and youth, reflected her conviction that everyone should be given support and opportunities. She demonstrated that being a royal was more than just custom and ritual. It also involved showing genuine concern for others. This enduring dedication is still an inspiration to others and is a part of her legacy for coming generations. Lady Helen Taylor, whose remarks encapsulated the most profound reality of her mother's existence, was at the center of her departure. Following her burial, the Duchess of Kent left behind a legacy of harmony, a life lived between the opulence of monarchy and the simplicity of intimate affection. In addition to leaving a mark on royal history, she also set an example for living a graceful life. Her narrative endures via her family's tears, a nation's lowered flags, and the memorials of those she assisted. Although her departure was final, her impact will live on. Catherine, Duchess of Kent, lives on in the hearts of her children, grandchildren, and everyone she inspired. What are your thoughts? Do you think the Duchess of Kent's enduring legacy will include her faith and strength? Leave a comment below with your opinions. Hearing them would be wonderful. For more, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Additionally, click the next video that appears on your screen. You'll like it.